Thank you for being with us. I'm Gretchen Figge, the CEO, and I am delighted to have Ed Nanney with us. He is a lawyer. He's a founding member of Foresight Legal Services. He is passionate about understanding and connecting to his clients, and he loves to find ways to give his clients added value. So it feels like when he discovered COREnology, he didn't actually just start walking with us, he just started sprinting ahead of us. And that inspired me to ask him to come on and talk to me. And so I could hear a little bit about what he's doing and why he's doing what he's doing. Welcome, Ed. It's good to have you here.
Well, thank you, Gretchen. I'm pleased to be with you today.
I am delighted. I would love to start just by hearing a little bit about who you are and your journey to get to this place in life where you want to connect to your clients like you do.
I've been a practicing attorney for 43 years. I started out in litigation practice. I moved in-house with a Fortune 200 company. I worked there for 10 years in the law department, 7 years in operations, the corporate movings around and things. Ultimately, I left that company 20 years ago and had a little bit of an entrepreneurial venture on my own, and then hung out my own shingle. And I think what I came to enjoy most about that was the direct relational situation where I was directly across the table from the people who wanted advice, needed help, and found that I was capable of doing that. And over the last 15 years, that's been the most gratifying part of my career because
Mhm.
I'm working face to face with individuals and families and helping them do some important stuff.
I love that. And that's one of my drivers too. I love to hear how people's stories, how their lives are changing, connecting, and helping them. So, you heard about COREnology. What clicked for you then? With all of this background information, what actually resonated?
I came across COREnology at a gathering it was sponsored by the Heritage Institute. It was in Nashville last fall. That makes it very convenient for me because I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, only an hour and a half or so away. And for the last several years, I'm part of an organization, the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. And
Mm,
one of the things we do is we learn from each other through what we call co-development teams. And one of those co-development teams is that I'm a co-chair of is oriented to help prepare beneficiaries to receive wealth. And several years ago, I had uh, become involved with the Purposeful Planning Institute. And it was there that I came to know John A. Warnick. It was there where I was first had the opportunity to hear David York speak. I became very involved with this idea of what John A. Warnick calls purposeful planning, but then other people might call legacy planning or some of those other ideas. And my own mindset in that regard is that, first of all, the particularly for those clients that are trust oriented, I frankly think trusts are better for more people than realize it. And they think, oh, it's just for the rich. Well,
mm,
my own attitude, and I actually don't have that many of what I think in some sort of objective sense would be called high net worth clients. But the way I see it is everybody has two kinds of treasure. They have their assets, they have their tangible assets, but then they also have the people they treasure. And so even though they're not as wealthy, maybe in a quantifiable sense as somebody else, it's still important to them to make sure that they've conveyed what they have in the way they want to convey it. And actually, going back to where I was introduced to COREnology, one of the speakers that morning was Jay Hughes. And he and John A. Warnick were speaking together. And one of the things that Jay Hughes was talking about, he says, look, what's the purpose of a family? The purpose of a family is to create happiness and well-being for each other. And Jay Hughes also said the purpose statement that he likes to see some form of in every trust that he creates is this trust was created as an act of love to enhance the lives of its beneficiaries. And so that exact kind of thing resonates with me. And so when I saw that COREnology provided an accessible way for people to speak about some of these topics and address some of these important things, like their core values, their core priorities, their family culture, uh, their views on money and wealth, and then any obstacles they might have in their planning, and the fact that it can be broken down and segmented and introduced in pieces and plugged in when appropriate, where appropriate, with whoever it's appropriate. It just made perfect sense. And if I went,
I love it so much. And obviously, I don't need to introduce anyone to the product because you're talking all about it. Thank you.
well,
So,
it's easy.
what's changed now that you've started using COREnology? What's changed in your practice?
One of the big changes is that first, in the implementation area, I've just been thinking about, okay, what are the applications? At what point in my process would I introduce this, and what would I introduce? And I think mindset for quite some time has been oriented to how do I introduce early on to clients that this is not a word processing exercise. This is not simply seeing an attorney saying you want a will or that you want a trust, and then I pull out some sort of generic template and plug in your names and give you a standardized product. Instead, there's a lot of counseling involved. It's, to me, for quite some time, it's been important for clients to be able, for their plan, to capture their voice, their vision, their values, and their purpose. I say that deliberately. And at the same time, if their expectations are that this is going to be, let's meet one time next week and then we'll meet again next week and you sign my papers, I want to establish the expectations early that I'm prepared to commit more because I believe you'll get more. And
Yeah.
and COREnology has become a good opportunity to make that happen. One of the ways to do that, which is something I'm just rolling out, is a distinct web page and a link on my website that invites people to receive a complimentary report on two of the components of COREnology, their core values and their core priorities. And what, and I shared COREnology a couple of months ago with my colleagues in the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys. And one of the comments that was made was it would be important for a couple to have some of this before they even start. And so, in order to do that, at no obligation to them, other than to give me the discrete email addresses that they need in order for me to, and for COREnology to generate the report, I'm going to provide the core values and the core priorities themselves to help them start their conversation. Now, at that point, selfishly, I've captured their information and I can continue to reach out to them and maybe give them the opportunity to do that. But this distinct website gives them a complementary tool that could help fuel their thinking towards a more purposeful endeavor. And then we'll go from there. And if they like what they see, they've got the opportunity to get the other three modules. And we would go on with that once they've established a relationship with the firm.
And it opens the door for them to have conversations about values before they even walk in the door. So, in some ways, it saves time once you're working with them.
Yes. And I don't, maybe it's the phrase I use. I hadn't heard it before, but I don't necessarily claim and I'm the only one ever to use it, but I call it values added planning. You
Mhm.
talk about a value added whatever,
Mhm.
but to me, this is values added planning because I think that's really where it starts. It's, I will tell clients when I'm working with them, fine, you have engaged counsel to provide you a an instrument that is legally, technically sufficient to accomplish what you have in mind. But in
Mm.
terms of what you want to tell your family and what you want to tell your loved ones and what you want to tell your beneficiaries, how in the world can you do that without the voice of
Mm.
the trust creators? And these kinds of tools, and then the other things that are available through one of the other resources that we have available to us in the national network is some materials that Scott Farnsworth and the Sunbridge organization promulgated years ago. And so we've got all this treasure trove of things that can enrich the plan for the clients. And I'm delighted that COREnology is another one of those resources that we can use to help the clients have better plans.
What kind of you've spent time with some clients utilizing COREnology. What kind of conversations have you had as a result of that? And what have you seen from the client?
I think one time recently I introduced it to some clients. They had already engaged me and we were going through the design process, which is we're mapping out certain features of the trust, and we're here in my conference room and we're having these discussions. And between husband and wife, I wouldn't call it conflict, but it was just some noise on the line. There was just some dissonance. And it seemed to me that that would, particularly the core views component on their views of wealth,
Yep.
one of those questions along the lines of how much of an inheritance would it take to spoil the beneficiary? It
Right.
seemed to be some of that noise on the line to where I said, okay, we had gotten as far as we were going to get that day. And I said, I'm going to give you a little homework. And I sent them actually, I sent them all 5 modules. And of course, core views was part of that. But they came back. And the next time we met, we had a more productive session. And it wasn't like they were at odds with each other or in conflict. But I think they actually found some affirmation that they were actually more aligned than it might have sounded
Mhm.
that particular day. And so it was helpful in that regard. I've got another example, which actually is not where I've applied COREnology, but one where I wish I'd had COREnology
Mhm.
back when that happened, because it was a couple. It was actually a very difficult client, and particularly the husband was particularly difficult. And his wife was saying she needed help if something had
Mhm.
happened to her husband, and she was going to need help managing their assets. How was she going to adapt? How was she going to do this? Because he was an alpha dog and he was going to run the program, and he just seemed tone deaf to what she was saying in terms of what her needs would be. And I think for them to have received what I thought would have told him and maybe see it, and when he
Yeah.
wasn't hearing it, it was obviously he wasn't hearing it. But if he could see it, then it might have worked better for her. And so that's a rear view mirror kind of thing to where I wish I had it before.
Yeah. I find that so fascinating because we talk often about advisors and lawyers using our tool, and it gives the spouse a voice to them. But you're saying it could even give a voice to their significant other, their spouse, where their spouse can't comprehend. And I believe, I mean, I've been married 30 years and I adore my husband, but sometimes we say things and we don't hear the same thing.
Yeah,
And so
there's hearing and then there's listening, right? Yeah.
it's not because of not trying, it's just that we think differently. So when we're talking numbers, It took me about 25 years to learn he needs a spreadsheet. I can't just ramble numbers off to him.
Oh,
And for him,
yeah.
he needs different things for me. And so this is an added source for spouses to see each other in a different way. I love
And I'm
that.
sorry, Gretchen. I'm sorry for the interruption. That's where, for example, with core values, and then the fact that core styles are generated out of that, and then you get a better sense of this is what this person's perspective is. This is how they approach analytical things. This is how they. This is some of their touch points. This is some of their priorities in terms of just decision making. That helps. And the another example, which I think I've shared with you, is two clients, the Glasses, and they're happy for me to use their names. Jeff and Regina responded to it that this was a marriage enrichment exercise. It wasn't just something that was good for their estate plan. It was good for them as a couple to have got
I love
some of these things. And they had this effusive thing and this effusive response to it that I'm going to be posting on my website, because this is the kind of experience that people can have. And primarily it's because I tried to think deliberately about how to add COREnology to my toolbox.
Well, it does sound like you have been very purposeful before COREnology came along, very
Right.
purposeful in engaging your clients. And now, as a result of having a tool, you're being even more purposeful in how you're engaging the client and understanding them.
That's my aspiration, certainly.
I love that. I love that you what did you say? You add value. It's adding value, but you're adding values by giving them values, letting them see their
Yeah,
values.
the term I think I used was values added planning. And
Value add
and I recently was working with a business consultant, and one of the things that he's very oriented to for business owners is what is the purpose of your enterprise? What is
mm,
really, and whether it's Simon Sinek or somebody else, they start, what is your why? And so for me, it's the Foresight Legal Services exist to uh, encourage, help, and equip individuals to recognize, manage, and ultimately gift their tangible and their intangible assets to their loved ones in ways that enrich them and help them be more productive and fulfilled. And so that involves this whole cadre of resources that I've been introduced to over the last 10 or 12 years. Very much stimulates me, very much makes it gratifying, like I say, to help those families do what Jay Hughes talks about. Jay Hughes, I have to give attribution where it belongs. And one of the things that Jay Hughes said when I was introduced to his remarks last fall is that you've got five kinds of capital. And he says, if you
mm,
think of financial capital, which is most of what we think of when we hear of capital, think of capital as your thumb. Your thumb by itself is pretty useless. But if you add the other kinds of capital, which are the human capital, the intellectual capital, the social capital, and the spiritual capital, then if you use all of those, you've got some dexterity, and there's something you can do and something you can really accomplish something with. And so you've got to bring these intangible things, these other four capitals, and then you've got something that um, gets the kind of reaction that I got from Jeff and Regina. Um, and it's that kind of thing makes your day when clients react like that.
absolutely, I love it. As I'm talking to you, I'm just thinking other users, how they could be worried about Does this take too long? Does it change your ability to, like, every time is so precious in your workday. Does this change your ability to actually make money for your personal company, your firm?
Well, I think to some extent that remains to be seen because my implementation of COREnology is still pretty young. I've
Mm.
been hitting the road running, but it still remains to be seen. Now, the incremental cost of adding COREnology it was a no-brainer for me. It was just absolutely a no-brainer. And I'm still thinking through in terms of the time commitment. First of all, with these two surveys that I'm going to be gifting to clients, they're going to do that on their own time. So it's not, they're going to take it when they'll take it. And between the two, it'll probably take them 15, 20 minutes to do it. And then
Yep.
if they're stimulated, if they're provoked to follow up, then we'll go from there. And the more we can do online, we're in that era where that's appealing. And if they
Yep.
can self-serve, and then I'm letting them take the first step on their own. And
Yep.
I do think, and I'm absolutely convinced of it more intuitively than maybe empirically. And that is that to offer what I'm calling values added planning is worth more. And so I'm beginning to see an uptick in my fees because they
Mhm.
realize that this is not just buying a kit and that I am receiving legal counsel that gives me both a quantitatively, but particularly a qualitatively better plan.
And that's our driver. Our goal is to give tools to you guys to connect more deeply with your clients because in the long run, we believe it's better. It's better for the human. And when you're looking at just making money and the business side of it, we believe that genuinely more people are going to be drawn to it. It's going to be worth more. And the market's changing in a way that you have to have something besides what ChatGPT can do for them.
Chat GPT only hears your question and then gives you an answer. But so much of our being counselors at law,
Yep.
we've got to start with the listening. And you've got to be asking the questions and asking good questions. And Corenology helps both ask some of the important questions, but also give us fodder for the questions we follow up and ask. And so it was a very easy decision for me to make to add Corenology to Foresight Legal Services. And it was very easy for me to introduce it to my colleagues in the national network of estate planning attorneys.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of that you're doing. And I'm so excited to see your clients and how they're affected in the future. As we wrap up, I would love to hear if you have any aha moments or anything that you would want to share that I didn't ask about.
I don't think so. I think the maybe the most telling thing was when um, Regina Glass came back and said this was like a marriage enrichment thing. And in the testimonial that she's given, she even talks this ought to be part of something you would discuss while you're dating. So the whole richness of what it can mean for the relationships of the clients as a couple
Mhm.
and then as a family, that was very much a wow thing for me.
I love it so much. And so not only are you giving them better legal advice and helping them develop a legacy and helping them understand their legacy isn't just the capital, financial capital, but additional capital, but you're giving them the ability to have internal family communication that helps change their family future.
That's the idea. And the better I can articulate that, the better my business will be. And I think COREnology helps me with that articulation.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here and telling me about what you're experiencing. And I can't wait to see your next steps. If you're watching us today and you have any questions for us, please always feel free to reach out to me, Gretchen at COREnology.com. And if you are interested in using Ed for legal advice because he is doing things differently, you can reach out to him at, I'll give you a
Okay.
chance to say your website because I don't have it memorized yet.
Well, it's foresightlegalservices.com, and it's the numeral four, not the word four. So foresightlegalservices.com with the numeral. We're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my phone number is 423-305-1704. And my email is ed@foresightlegalservices.com. So any of those means for reaching out, if I can speak to anyone privately or directly about this work and about COREnology, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you so much for being with us, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
We'll keep you posted.
Thank you. See ya.